What's going on, fellow A-plussers? It's your boy Adam Perez back once again with a brand new video going live for you guys today over on our YouTube page, Facebook, as well as Twitch for you guys, as we had a huge announcement today in regards to DC Studios finally revealing the slate to us for their upcoming DCU films and TV projects. That's right, James Gunn has been promising for the longest time that by the end of January, we would in fact have an idea as to the direction in which the DCU would in fact be going. And so today I decided to go ahead, take some time on my lunch break in between work to go ahead and talk about all the unique and incredible sort of titles that James Gunn and Peter Safran have in fact laid out for us. If you have not checked out his announcement video, we have in fact posted that over on our Facebook page. It's about a 5-minute clip, if you will, of James Gunn not only showcasing his motivations as to the mindset tackling the DCU, but also the 10 projects that we're going to be talking about with you guys today. There's a ton of information, maybe not too detailed in regards to casting announcements, directors and writers, and those sort of things. Those are the details that we certainly have not gotten, but we at least have an idea of 10 titles, 5 films, 5 TV projects that are all interconnected. We're going to be breaking that down for you in what I would assume would be chronological order, but we will at least decipher for you guys what is film and what is certainly television. So I want to go ahead and do this live because I really wanted to get your guys' thoughts and excitement in regards to, or worries in regards to some of the slate as we certainly go through them. This is Slate. This is their very first slate. This is their chapter 1, if you will. They have in fact mentioned that what they are revealing today is not the full chapter 1, but they have at least even titled it chapter 1, Gods and Monsters. I kind of really enjoy the ring of it, if you ask me. And this just feels like an opportunity now for DC to really expand on introducing us to brand new characters and really corners of the DC universe that we haven't really had explored, and really give new characters and some old characters opportunities to kind of shine here. So I am really interested to see what James Gunn has in store for us. So let's kind of, I'm going to be jumping between a Hollywood Reporter article along with a Variety.com article to kind of give us all the full-on details as we go about it. So to kick things off, it says that the pair has been busy in the past 3 months since taking over. They've revamped the way the movie and TV side's doing business, cutting ties with projects and creators. They did say that a writer's room was formed to find an overall story that will launch unified DC universe. Creators have been approached, and a plan, at least part one has been built as chapter 1, Gods and Monsters. So they in fact did go ahead and put together a writing room, which I think is pretty brilliant, if you ask me. I think that's the first step to making sure everything you have going is in fact sort of interconnected with each other. So I think they definitely went above and beyond. The writers room included Drew Goddard, who did The Martian, Jeremy Slater, who wrote Moon Knight, Christina Hobson, who wrote The Flash and Batgirl, Crystal Henry, who wrote Watchmen, and comics creator Tom King from Batman, Mr. Miracle. I mean, the guy has a plethora of titles under his belt. So Gunn also indicated that at least some of these writers would continue working on DCU projects. So a lot to really thankful that they went ahead and put together a writer's room. Nothing better than a writer's room, if you ask me. It just means that you have a plan in mind and everybody's certainly on the same page in regards to how you want to formulate and roll out your stuff. So let's go ahead and dive into the titles themselves. And so first off, if I'm not mistaken, I believe this will in fact be a TV project, and an odd choice to begin with, but we've got an animation side of things titled Creature Commandos. According to Hollywood Reporter, it says it's an animated 7-episode series written by James Gunn that's already in production. Originally a team of classic monsters assembled to fight Nazis, but this is a modern take on that concept. He did say that the voice actors have yet to be cast, but they are looking for people who can voice the animated characters and also portray the live action versions when these characters show up in movies and shows. That's something that James Gunn has seemingly been adamant about, that the animation characters, you will be seeing some of them stay in animation or go from animation over to live action. And in the process of doing that, they want to go ahead and make sure that the actors that they get represent their voice as well. So there will be a lot of interconnectivity between those two. But this is the first project greenlit by Peter Safran and James Gunn. This will be, in fact, on HBO Max. The premise features Frankenstein's monster teaming up with a werewolf, a vampire, and a gorgon to fight Nazis in World War II. It doesn't appear that Gunn's version takes quite the same approach. It does mention that Weasel, you guys can see Weasel here to the very, very far right. Weasel from James Gunn's 2021 The Suicide Squad is actually one of the Commandos, along with Rick Flag's father, Rick Flag Sr. James Gunn went on to say that it allows the creative collaborators to tell stories that are gigantic, but without spending $50 million, certainly an episode. And again, he was very much adamant that the actors cast to voice the characters will also play their roles in live action at some point in time. So that's the first route that we're certainly going. Creature Commandos, interesting choice to certainly go ahead and kick off a slate, if you ask me. But that's definitely the route that they're going to be going. And if you ask me, I am kind of curious to see what it's going to be like for some of these characters to eventually make that jump to live action. After that, we have ourselves another television series, and this one, in fact, is Waller. It's a spinoff of Gunn's own HBO Max hit series Peacemaker. Viola Davis is set to return, and it is being written by Crystal Henry, who did Watchmen, along with Jeremy Carver, the creator of the Doom Patrol TV series, which had just recently gotten canceled. But if you ask me, his addition alone really gets me excited to kind of see just how crazy this particular series certainly is going to be. Out of the James Gunn announcement video, if you check out the video for yourself, he talks about how this is probably one of his favorite projects, how excited he is for everybody to certainly see this particular spinoff. I felt like we knew that this was definitely coming, but it is in fact confirmed. It does say that season 2 of the Peacemaker may be on hold since James Gunn is going to be working on a Superman movie, which we'll talk about. But it sees instead Team Peacemaker will actually appear alongside Viola Davis as a continuation of that show. So it does make me wonder as to whether or not, say like a John Cena, if John Cena may come back as Peacemaker in this particular series. Again, he hasn't been confirmed, but it does say Team Peacemaker will appear alongside Viola Davis as a continuation of that show. It says, along with Crystal Henry, who was part of the DC's writing room, Waller will also be executive produced by Jeremy Carver, who created Doom Patrol. They are crushing it, is what Peter Safran wind up saying. It's just the greatest show ever. So both Creature Commandos and Waller are expected to debut before the Superman movies wind up dropping. So again, we got Creature Commandos to kick things off, and then we've got Amanda Waller series, which is going to be an HBO Max series. So those are 2 TV projects. Next up, we are going to be jumping over to the film side of things, as James Gunn mentions that this is in fact sort of the beginning of the bigger overall story for them in regards to their DCU slate. And that is in fact going to be Superman Legacy. So this is in fact next, is the movie featuring the Man of Steel that James Gunn is writing and may direct, although no commitments on that end have been made as to whether or not he's going to be the director. It says Superman is the true kickoff for the duo's DCU plans. It's not an origin story. It focuses on Superman balancing his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing. He is the embodiment of truth, justice, and the American way. He is kindness in the world that thinks that kindness is old-fashioned. And believe it or not, we actually have a release date for Superman Legacy. The release date is, in fact, July 11th, 2025. So just a little over 2 years away, we will, in fact, be having ourselves another Superman movie. And if you ask me, I do think that's a perfect time. I mean, look, right around July 4th, right? Talk about truth, justice, and the American way. It definitely very much feels as though Superman is going to fit right into that perfectly. They also say that it will mark the start of the DCU. Gunn is writing the script. Trying to see, if there was any other details. Yeah, it says Superman is for everyone. That's a 4-quadrant film that should speak to everyone in the world. They also say a separate Superman movie, J.J. Abrams and writer Tanishi Coates remains in development and would exist outside of the DCU. So I find that interesting. So we are, in fact, getting ourselves a Superman legacy film, but the Black Superman story that Tanashi Coates and J.J. Abrams are working on is still in development. It is something that certainly will happen. One thing that I appreciated about the announcement that James Gunn had for us here was the idea that, they are still going to be doing their Elseworlds DC films. So those are films like Matt Reeves' The Batman, the Joker sequel, and if anything, I would assume then this upcoming Superman that J.J. Abrams and Tanashi Coates are certainly working on would probably be under that DC Elseworlds umbrella as well. So outside of that, when it comes to the true DCU, Superman Legacy will be kicking us off with the main overall story for that. And again, the release date for that is, in fact, going to be July 11th. So this is where we really start kind of getting into the meat of the DC overall slate. You'll start noticing they're going to go from movie to TV, movie to TV, movie to TV, because we got our movie in Superman. But next up that we're going to be talking about is Lanterns. We got ourselves a Lantern television series here. Greg Berlanti's long in the works Green Lantern series has been scrapped officially, and the duo have parted ways with the longtime DC series steward. So whatever idea that they had for the Green Lantern TV series run by Greg Berlanti is no longer happening. This is now a new story that they're going to be telling. It's in its place will be a new take on the space cops with power rings. They say our vision for this is very much in the veins of True Detective, which I love the sound of that. It's a terrestrial based. It will feature prominent Lantern heroes Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart as one of the most important shows they have in development. This plays a really big role in leading into the main story we are telling across film and TV. So right out of the gate, with Superman Legacy being the very first big story for their DCU, right after that, they're going into a Green Lantern TV series that will play a big role in leading to the main story that they're telling across film and television as well. So these are very much sort of connected. I am kind of intrigued about the idea of this being a terrestrial sort of Green Lantern story being told. Clearly, Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart will certainly be at the focus of it. Does that mean that we're going to get like Kilowog and all these other sort of aliens and creatures from other sectors? That I certainly don't know. But if it is a terrestrial story, it does make me wonder if somebody like, say, a Guy Gardner might pop up in here, certainly at some point in time. So definitely a lot of possibilities. Kyle Rayner, anybody, right? That's definitely a possibility. It does also say here that it is a huge HBO quality event. So they're definitely going to be putting their budget behind it. I love the idea of it being referred to as sort of a true detective series itself, especially when you're talking about the idea of space cops. So maybe they're working alongside each other, trying to solve a mystery. So it does say that the show will focus on two of the best known members of the Green Lantern Corps, Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart, who investigates a mystery that, again, they say will in fact be playing a big role in the overall main story arc. So this is a very important show, is what they certainly say. Of all things, it says this project is separate from a Green Lantern series that was being developed. Greg's vision was more of a space opera. Our vision is much more of a true detective terrestrial-based investigation story. So our lanterns are going to be getting into the nitty-gritty of their overall story. So I'm digging that. Superman Legacy followed by Lanterns. And then we have something quite unique that I definitely was not expecting in here. And this goes back to a film project. Again, we go movies, TV, and now movies again. The Authority. Now, let me tell you real quick. The Authority, when it comes to Wildstorm comic books, so this is actually a property that used to be part of Wildstorm, I believe was then engulfed into DC along with like Wildcats and other characters and things like that. But The Authority was always a series that I personally never picked up or learned anything about. So this is really going to be all new territory for me. So after Lanterns, this is The Authority. It says it's a movie based on a team of superheroes with rather extreme methods of protecting the planet that first originated in the late 90s under an influential imprint known as Wildstorm, run by artist and now head of DC Publishing, Jim Lee. One of the things of DC, this is what James Gunn says, one of the things of the DC is that it's not just a story of heroes and villains. Not every film and TV is going to be about good guy versus bad guy. Giant things from the sky comes and good guys win. There are white hats, black hats, and gray hats. They're kind of like Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men. They know that they know that you want them on the wall, or at least they believe that. So this is going to be pretty intense, if you ask me. If anything, when it comes to The Authority, I'm going to be really fascinated to kind of see like the complete polar opposite of, say, the idea of Superman Legacy, and like his mindset and his vision on what the idea of being a superhero is. And then when you think about it, just the complete polar opposite of a team like The Authority. And I kind of am kind of curious to see like how they would affect the mindset, or how somebody like them and Superman kind of view the world that they're certainly living in. So I do see, I do like the polar opposites that they're immediately sort of trying to set from a Superman film, Green Lantern series, and now The Authority. It says, from global fame to relative obscurity, Superman Legacy will lead directly into The Authority, an ensemble movie about superhumans who have less than idealistic approach to saving the world. So the fact that we go from a Superman movie and then the next film up is The Authority, I love the idea that you clearly get to see the less idealistic side of somebody, Superman, and a completely different group. So I kind of enjoy that. He's gone about some length about The Authority project. He said he's really excited to bring to life. He says, as a comic, Authority, oh, sorry, I was getting a phone call there. He says it isn't just a story about heroes and villains, and I think that's kind of what we kind of broke down also. James Gunn said the film is being written now, but he did decline to say who was going to be the screenwriter for The Authority. So this is, for me, I feel like out of everything that we've gotten so far, outside of the animation side with Creature Commandos, this is probably one of the bigger risks, I think, that they certainly have. The idea of introducing us to a new slate of characters that we've never really seen before on the big screen, and hopefully it definitely works. So I definitely feel like The Authority, definitely a big risk for them, certainly going forward. So after that, though, we go back to the television side of things with another TV project. And this one I find really fascinating and kind of intrigued about, Paradise Lost. This is, in fact, going to be a television series. The duo described this HBO Max series as Game of Thrones style drama set on the all female island that is Wonder Woman's birthplace in Themyscira. Filled with political intrigue and scheming between power players, it takes place before the events of the Wonder Woman films. So that's interesting. So when they break it down like that, it definitely feels like the Wonder Woman films are still going to be sticking into continuity, that they're not going to be completely jumping off board of what was certainly created before them. But the idea that they have this as a Game of Thrones-ish kind of story is what Peter Safran said, really kind of gets me excited. It says, before the birth of Diana here. It's really about political intrigue behind a society of all women. Added James Gunn says, how did that come about? What's the origin of an island of all women? What are the beautiful truths and the ugly truths behind all of that? And what's the scheming like between the different power players in that society? The provocative title recalls the Paradise Island Lost comic series authored by Phil Jimenez and George Perez, which followed a civil war on Themyscira. However, that run directly involved Wonder Woman. So they definitely are taking some adaptions here from Paradise Island Lost comic series. So this would be, if you guys are interested in reading some comics to kind of see what this series may be based off of, definitely go ahead and check out Paradise Island Lost. But for me, look, I'm really excited for this because this almost kind of feels like what maybe Patty Jenkins might have had in mind in regards to like an Amazon series. It may not necessarily be the same storyline, but the idea of a series set on Themyscira is something that's always been pretty fascinating to me. Like I just think that there's so many great characters they could really up now. This is the time before Diana, so I'm not too familiar with who might have still even been around before Diana was certainly born. But you got Hippolyta to certainly possibly see in here. I'm hoping Artemis is certainly involved, and you've got another character in Nubia. I don't know how long Nubia's certainly been around for, but another opportunity for another Amazon sort of warrior to kind of step up and play a role in here, right? So we're not just necessarily getting one Wonder Woman in a sense, but multiple at the end of the day. And so like somebody like a Yara Flor is something that I personally kind of wanted to see, but I'm kind of under the impression if this takes place before Diana's time, she may not necessarily be a character that's kind of focused on here, but you talk about the idea of giving other women the opportunity to certainly shine and step up in that superhero role of some sort, maybe later on down the road, would certainly be interesting. So Hippolyta, Artemis, Nubia, all these characters I'm really looking forward to kind of seeing just how involved maybe Wonder Woman's mother certainly was in how Paradise Island became to be sort of Themyscira and things like that. So I do think there's a lot of potential to certainly be had there as well. So again, Paradise Lost is in fact a television series for them. So again, we're going from television series, and now we're going to go back to film, as the next one up on this list is in fact a new Batman movie. That's right, guys. We got a new Batman movie that's certainly headed our way here. So we're going to be having ourselves dual Batman once again. Robert Pattinson clearly playing his Batman over on the DC Elseworlds side of things. But this is going to be the new introduction of the DCU Batman, is what James Gunn says, of Bruce Wayne, and also introducing our favorite Robin, Damian Wayne. So look, we've gotten plenty of Dick Grayson content out there, if you will. Go see Titans, even though personally, look, I definitely have always wanted a Dick Grayson Robin in the DCU. At this point in time, I would assume Homeboy is just Nightwing. So if he's Nightwing already, maybe we get ourselves a Nightwing film at some particular point in time. I'll keep my fingers crossed, but this will in fact be a Bruce Wayne and Damian Wayne story. And James Gunn calls him a little son of a bitch, which I definitely appreciate. The movie will take inspiration from the now classic Batman run written by Grant Morrison that introduced Batman to a son he never knew existed, a murderous tween raised by an assassin. It's a very strange father and son story. So that's definitely something to look forward to, but that will in fact be movie wise. So that's going to be our introduction. So yeah, they will have a new Batman that will exist separately from the Robert Pattinson film family, and the Brave and the Bold will introduce quote unquote the Bat family. First among them is Robin. So I would, if anything, I would assume if they say it's going to be introducing us to the Bat family, first of them is Robin. I got to think other people are certainly involved in here. Wouldn't it be trippy if we wind up having not only Nightwing pop up in here, but maybe even Leslie Grace reprise her role as Batgirl and maybe pop up in this particular movie at some point in time? That would be pretty trippy. It would be even trippier if Brenton Thwaites from Titans wind up actually being the Nightwing for this movie. It definitely is probably not going to happen, but the possibility of Leslie Grace maybe popping up in this movie as Batgirl, always a possibility. So I am kind of curious to see how they're going to go ahead and go about that. Damian Wayne is Bruce Wayne's biological son, a fact unknown to Wayne for the first 8 to 10 years sort of Damian's life. So that's it says the other comics writer Gunn mentioned by name was Tom King, who participated in DC writing room and leads writes into the next feature project. So it looks like Tom King very heavily involved in bringing this particular title to life. So that's going to be the next film project after Paradise Lost, our new introduction to the DCU Batman. Next up, outside of that, again, we go from movies back to a television project for you guys, and that will in fact be Booster Gold. I've been really excited for anything Booster Gold related. I feel like Booster Gold has been mentioned to drop on DC television for years, even though I do think we might have gotten him briefly in like Legends of Tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, in one of like the later seasons. But people have been asking for like a Blue Beetle, Booster Gold sort of comedy, buddy cop sort of film. But it seems as though we're going to be getting ourselves a Booster Gold HBO Max series based on a unique and lower tiered hero created in 1986. Peter Safran said the series, it's about a loser from the future who uses basic future technology to come back to today and pretend to be a superhero. And Peter Gunn described it as imposter syndrome as a superhero. So that definitely sounds like it's going to be pretty unique, to say the least, especially if you followed Booster Gold's status in the comic books. Just knowing just the type of clown that this man certainly is, it should be pretty interesting. While he may not be familiar to casual fans of the DC, the character, also known as Mike Carter, is a fan favorite among devoted readers. And this feels very much like it's right up James Gunn's alley, if you ask me. In the 25th century, Mike is a disgraced former football star who uses a time machine on display in the Metropolis Space Museum. So imposter syndrome as a superhero really makes me kind of excited to see what Booster Gold is certainly going to be all about. So definitely a fan favorite amongst DC fans, one that I think DC fans have been asking and clamoring for a really long time. And it's definitely here, ladies and gentlemen. So Booster Gold will in fact be a DC HBO Max TV project. After Booster Gold, we've got two more concepts for you guys, two more titles to reveal. And next up will in fact be, and again, we go from television to movies, and we're getting ourselves a Supergirl movie, ladies and gentlemen, a Supergirl movie. Whether or not she's going to be played by Sasha Calle, who's playing Supergirl in the upcoming Flash movie, who certainly knows in regards to that. But a lot of fantastic possibilities certainly here, as this is going to be taking heavy inspiration from a Tom King storyline. It says it's taking its cue from the recent Tom King written miniseries. This project promises to have a different take than what most think of when the idea of Superman's cousin comes to mind. We'll see the difference between Superman, who was sent to Earth and raised by loving parents from the time he was an infant, versus Supergirl, raised on a rock, a chip off of Krypton, and who watched everyone around her die and be killed in terrible ways for the first 14 years of her life, and then come to Earth. She is much more hardcore and not the Supergirl that we're certainly used to. I think even James Gunn mentions that she's quite jaded in her particular mindset after everything that she's kind of been exposed to. But it is, in fact, based off of Tom King's comic run of the same title from 2021 and 22, Woman of Tomorrow. And again, James Gunn mentions her as a very different type of Supergirl. So yeah. The King series does involve Crypto, the super dog, but they don't mention whether or not they're going to get the opportunity to actually portray Crypto in this particular film. So two supers. I think that's a pretty interesting choice. But I think the fact that they are two completely different, opposite characters, is pretty intriguing to me. Again, I am kind of curious if this is a Supergirl like from Sasha Calle, or if they're going to be recasting that Supergirl, and this is another multiversal part, another multiversal variant of the character or whatever the case may be. So interesting choice for a Superman to kick things off and then eventually to give us a Supergirl film. They have been talking about the idea even before Peter Safran and James Gunn came on board for like the past 2 years or so of teasing that the idea of a Supergirl movie. So I doubt that it's the same concept that they had 2 years ago or so, but it seems very much like they have been really working hard towards bringing her to the big screen. So that will in fact be Supergirl, Women of Tomorrow. And then from there, we actually have ourselves another film. This is where film and TV stop sort of intersecting. And the next film up, guys, is Swamp Thing. It does say Swamp Thing. It's a horror film that promises to close out the first part of the first chapter. Easily the most extreme example of James Gunn and Peter Safran's conviction to diversify the DCU. Swamp Thing will investigate the dark origins of Swamp Thing through the prism of horror. By way of explaining further, James Gunn referenced the in initial reactions to the Guardians of the Galaxy joining the MCU and initial questions about how Rocket Raccoon would work standing next to Thor. That mashup quality wound up being one of the highlights of Infinity War and Avengers game, is what James Gunn argued. He says they're one-upping that approach with Swamp Thing. This is much more horrific film, but we'll still have Swamp Thing interact with other characters, is what he said. Now, whether or not those characters are going to be in this film, who knows? But I think this is a brilliant way to not only open up the door to the horror genre in comic book movies, but J.J. Abrams has been working on, or is at least set to produce, some sort of Justice League dark content. I believe there is still a Constantine film that's certainly going to be happening. So I do wonder if Swamp Thing sort of opens that door to Constantine, to a future Zatanna, maybe a future demon, a future dead man, who certainly knows, but it definitely opens up the opportunity for a lot of these horrific side of the MCU characters to showcase itself. I mentioned the idea of the Authority sort of being kind of risky when it comes to the DCU slate. Swamp Thing certainly may be another one of those risks in regards to branching off into the more horror realm for DCU, and it'll be interesting to kind of see how things are received. So as of right now, the slate in which we provided for you, I believe, is at least in chronological order in regards to not only how it's going to be released, but how things are certainly interconnected with one another. So just for for another brief breakdown for you guys. We'll go over this again very briefly. So starting off, you've got Creature Commandos, which is going to be an animated series. Some of these voice actors will in fact be reprising their role once they're cast in live action form sometime down the line. Followed by that is in fact the Amanda Waller TV series, which is kind of going to be a spinoff of the Peacemaker series. Team Peacemaker will in fact be in this particular series as well. And anytime Amanda Waller is included in anything, you know you got to pay attention to it for sure. And hopefully to kind of see how she's involved in the bigger picture that the next project officially kicks off. And that is, in fact, going to be Superman Legacy, which will be officially kicking off the DCU main storyline. So you've got film here. It's going to connect into Lanterns, or at least Lanterns is going to be a HBO Max TV series, which will find Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart investigating something that will ultimately lead to the bigger main story arc of the DCU. After that, we go back to a movie, The Authority, which apparently Superman Legacy will lead into this particular film. You get the opportunity to see superheroes with a much grayer, not necessarily a black and white mindset of what a superhero means, but definitely that gray shaded area for sure. So it should definitely be an interesting polar opposite of what Superman stands for compared to what these heroes stand for. We go back to TV with Paradise Lost, which will take place on Paradise Island before the birth of Wonder Woman. So we're going to get plenty of Amazon opportunities to be focused on, and they reference this as Game of Thrones like. We've gotten two comparisons, right? Lantern, very much True Detective like, and Paradise Lost as Game of Thrones. From there, we're going to go back into the movies for The Brave and the Bold, which will introduce us to our new DCU Batman, and also introduce us to not only the Bat family, but most importantly, Damian Wayne as Robin, as we get to see Batman discovering he's got a kid. From there, we're going back to television for an HBO Max series in Booster Gold, who comes from the future into the present and pretends to be some big superhero that he's certainly not. Going back to film, we've got Superwoman, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, based off of the Tom King comic book series, which really shows us a much more jaded Supergirl who has definitely had to live a much more different life than her cousin Superman certainly has. And it should be interesting to see what that relationship is going to be like. And then, of course, breaking into the horror realm of things and opening things up and possibly closing out chapter one slate of films is in fact Swamp Thing. So a lot of big things certainly happening, to certainly say the least, but that's what they've got for movies and television. And yes, they still very much plan on keeping the Batman around for you guys. So definitely look forward to that. I believe they even titled it Batman Part 2. And James Gunn did talk a little bit about the slate that we already have in store, right? We have movies that are already set to come out literally this year. Shazam, Fury of the Gods dropping March 17th. You've got The Flash, which for the most part, James Gunn calls The Flash probably one of the greatest superhero movies ever made, is what James Gunn is certainly saying. And this man has watched his fair share of comic book movies. He also said that the four leads of those films, Shazam, The Flash, Blue Beetle, and Aquaman, could potentially continue playing their leading roles in the DC projects down the line. There is nothing that prohibits that from happening, is what James Gunn says. So Zachary Levi might certainly still have a job. Jolo Mataduena, Jason Momoa seems like he's still going to be playing Aquaman. I think if anything, it's probably the Ezra Miller that's got a lot of people kind of upset. Look, Peter Safran says this: Ezra Miller is completely committed to their recovery. We are fully supportive of that journey that they are on right now. When the time is right, when they are ready to have that discussion, we will all figure out what is the best path forward. So it doesn't sound like they're committed to Ezra Miller as of right now, but they're still very much open to the idea of him playing the Flash if that's a discussion that they will eventually have in time based off of how committed Ezra Miller truly is to his recovery. He says, but right now they're completely focused on their recovery. And in our conversation with them in the last couple of months, it feels like they are making enormous progress. So Peter Safran, James Gunn, open to the idea of Ezra Miller possibly returning as long as he is committed to his recovery and things go well. But again, no official decision has been made. So I know that that's definitely going to irk some people and certainly rub some people the wrong way based off of everything that um, Ezra Miller has certainly done. He's pleaded guilty to some things. He's gotten some court cases out of the way. I'm pretty sure there's probably more down the pipeline for him legally to certainly have to deal with, but it's truly just a wait and see right now. Listen, I still think it's very too problematic. And I say that in the sense of you never know if somebody's going to relapse. You never know if somebody's going to fall back on their ways if recovery doesn't necessarily go super well. And part of having the Flash is such a big important part of the DCU just feels very volatile to me, and something that you would want to certainly stay away from the chance of it ever happening again. But there is a part of me, the human side of me, that also understands the concepts of second chances, people having the opportunity to recover and believing in somebody. So to that extent, I understand Peter Safran and James Gunn being open, but man, the optics of this, the perception of this and perspective by some people definitely puts like a very gray cloud over everything. So we'll definitely see how things go in that regards. They say we don't want the series to feel in any way like stepchildren or less than. It's just another way to tell the stories. They like being able to spend 8 hours digging deep into certain characters, talking about the idea of balancing the interconnected world between TV and film also. So they're definitely putting as much love into those television series as they are the films. They also took on the touchy subject of Henry Cavill, tipped to return as Superman. We didn't fire Henry. Henry was never cast, is what James Gunn certainly said. For me, it's about who do I want to cast as Superman and who do the filmmakers we have want to cast. And for me, for this story, it isn't Henry. He says, look, I like Henry. I think he's a great guy. I think he's getting dicked around by a lot of people, including the former regime at this company. But this Superman is not Henry for a number of reasons. Look, and this is one of the reasons why I love James Gunn. This man does not sugarcoat shit for you. He just comes out and he says it like it is. We didn't fire Henry Cavill. He just was never cast. And so when you're rebooting or having new plans, you got to cast who it is. And unfortunately, his story just did not call for Henry. And I appreciate his honesty and probably honesty with Henry Cavill in a sense of, bro, these people have been dicking you around forever. Let me be the honest person in the room for you. And yeah, I think you got to respect people like that are just going to be outright honest and hopefully continue to keep on to their on their good side and continue to branch out and build relationships, right? Because you never know if Henry Cavill might pop up at some point in time. He also says, look, actors, filmmakers that I work with are going to say things that I agree with and things that I don't agree with. He says, I can't be changing my plans all the time because an actress says something that I don't agree with. And at the same token, if someone is doing something that is morally reprehensible, that's a different story, and we have to take that into an account. And look, I would say morally reprehensible, a la maybe look at Ezra Miller here, but you get the idea of what James Gunn is certainly trying to say there. They say the bar is going to be very high for projects to be outside the DCU. the Elseworlds project, but every now and then there will be something that lives up to that. They are putting a premium on screenplay writing, saying that would prevent the dreaded feeling of superhero fatigue. And we just kind of talked about that, right? The idea that even Kevin Feige came out and said, look, superhero fatigue is something that's not going to happen. Why? People have been adapting books and novels into films for years, and nobody complains about that. Comic books, whether that be Marvel or DC, have years, decades of fantastic stories that can still be adapted, like books and novels get adapted to movies. But the focus always has to be storytelling and the genre in which you set it in. And so it seems as though James Gunn very much, again, understands Kevin Feige's point, has that same belief in the idea that at the end of the day, you put a premium on screenplay writing. That would, in fact, prevent the dreaded feeling of superhero fatigue and also give the projects a tonal and thematic difference from each other. Gunn called out the degradation of screenwriters in Hollywood and also said that the duo wanted to be respectful of the voice of filmmakers they are working with up to a point. It's not the Gunverse. It's not. It's got to be all these different feels from all these different stories. That's what makes it so fun. The stories are completely different, and each has the individual expression of the writers and the directors that are making these projects. We're not stupid. Not every filmmaker is going to be happy, because if someone is doing something that isn't working, we're going to be honest. And guys, I think that says it all. I think that says it all in regards to what it is that James Gunn and Peter Safran are certainly trying to do here. And I really appreciate their commitment to storytelling first. That's how you get people back. You can't listen to everybody whining and complaining all the time. You got to keep your head down, focus, and tell the stories that you want to tell and make them feel thematically different. You don't want every superhero movie to feel exactly quite like the same. And it seems as though they're definitely taking some chances with that, right? Bringing Superman back to the, truth, justice, and the American way, giving us a true detective cop story in Lanterns, giving us a Game of Thrones feel for something like Paradise Lost, dealing with Themyscira, going to a father and son story for Brave and the Bold with a psychotic little brat assassin, hitting that comedy with Booster Gold, getting into horror with Swamp Thing, right? You can feel already sort of the differences that are going to be encapsulating this DCU certainly going forward. And look, I think James Gunn is certainly the man for the job. Now, some people may not love every concept on here, right? Like there's certain things that I'm unsure about. The Authority, how's that certainly going to work, right? Supergirl, I think Supergirl is going to be fantastic just based off of the series itself. But how do you pull off a Booster Gold, right? Brave and the Bold should be interesting, but are we ready for another Batman, right? Do people feel okay with the Robert Pattinson Batman and a DCU Batman once again? So I can understand maybe some hesitancy, like Creature Commandos, what the is that? But I'm going to give it a chance, because I feel like what James Gunn has put forth for us over the past several years, whether you're a fan of his work from Slither, the stuff that he did before MCU, Guardians of the Galaxy movies, the Guardians of the Galaxy special, Suicide Squad, the Peacemaker series, all of these I think have really lived up to their expectations and won a lot of people over. So James Gunn's current record for me is pretty positive. And you attach that to him being somebody that's worked with Marvel Studios, works with Kevin Feige, probably has a similar mindset. I think if anything, he's the creative one in the group. And you've got somebody like Peter Safran, who's such a great producer, to bring in the right people to make these work. There's nothing that tells me I should not be positive about this. Weary, intrigued about certain things to kind of see how things will be pulled off. Absolutely. But I do think that they have the right man for the job. Whether or not the execution of everything comes together and people are fully sold, that will definitely have to wait. But again, Superman Legacy, begins the DCU films. That's July 11th, 2025. So stay tuned for that, guys, and a lot more to certainly be revealed. And as the week progresses, as we get more details, definitely check us out over on our Facebook page. We'll be posting articles there for you guys to keep you up to date on all the news. And then, of course, later on this weekend, Sunday live at 12 p.m. Central Time, we'll definitely have a live episode of A Plus Hero Report to break down all this goodness with other co-hosts, along with maybe some other stories for you guys as well. Unless the DCU stuff is just going to take up the entire week, who certainly knows. But let me know your guys' thoughts after hearing this slate and breakdown. And yes, I will put timestamps on this video for you guys so you can jump in between the different articles. Let me know your thoughts in regards to this. What are some of the titles you're most excited about? What are you unsure or uncertain about also? And what titles would you have liked to have seen them also come up with? So again, this is just part of Slate 1, Chapter 1, titled Gods and Monsters. Certainly more to come to fill up their first chapter, but let me know your guys' thoughts in the live chat and comment section box below. I will get into some topics, some stuff with you guys here real quick. Give me one moment, though. My ass got log back in. Who else we got in here? Doomsday's in the house. What's up, Doomsday? Good to see you. Marcelino says, "Hey Adam, I'm excited for the future of DC." So am I. So am I. Doomsday, I'm really excited for the future of DC. So am I. Enrique says, "Superman, Batman, and other projects. Can't wait to find out right before the upcoming 2023 films, Shazam 2 and more." And I kind of like the idea that James Gunn is open to the idea of possibly keeping some of these actors around. I find it really interesting that Zachary Levi might get the opportunity to reprise his role, even Aquaman for Jason Momoa. If there is a question that I have, it's probably the idea of what's this Lobo rumor stuff, right? Like, is that still certainly a possibility? I don't know if he's going to be playing other roles or not. But I do want to see how they work around all of this stuff. Let's see here. Derpy, what's up, Derpy? He says he did it. Cry face. Marcelino says we already have connections to the Suicide Squad. Absolutely. And you get something like Amanda Waller's series, right? It just opens the door sort of even more. Derpy says anyone that doesn't support these projects are not DC fans. I mean, look, I'm sure they're always going to have its haters out there. You know what I mean? But look, I was a comic book fan before I became a comic book movie fan. Growing up in the 80s and in the 90s, I started my comic collection early, clearly even before the age of 10 for me. I was reading comic books, right? So, I come from a generation of people who have loved these characters, just reading them on the page before being a big comic book nerd was certainly cool, right? And so I think people that understand, or at least that had been comic book fans first before comic book movie fans, are maybe a little bit more appreciative, or at least open-minded to see some of these unknown characters or not well-known characters get the opportunity to kind of shine. DC has to do certainly something drastic. There are people out there all the time that talk about, you don't necessarily have to follow the Marvel formula. This don't look like a Marvel formula to me, at least to begin with. It feels, if anything, maybe like a modern day Marvel formula in the sense of movies and TVs and having them kind of interconnected overall. But outside of that, you got to take a swing and certainly do something different and unique when it comes to DCU. And just looking at the lineup already, I think you can say he definitely achieved that. Marcelino says, people say Green Lantern has the potential to be the next Star Wars in terms of space exploration. Well, look, when it comes to Green Lantern, it's not going to be the space opera that Greg Berlanti had mentioned prior. He does also mention the idea that this is very a terrestrial kind of based show. So while I expect to see Power Set and maybe a few aliens here, I definitely expect it almost to kind of stay on Earth. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe when he says terrestrial, maybe he's just talking about the Green Lanterns they'll focus on, but maybe their adventure will still be kind of in space or exploring other planets. That I certainly don't know. But they did mention it would have a true detective sort of vibe, and not necessarily the space opera that Greg Berlanti had sort of envisioned. But look, I think they understand the importance of this show, and because of the fact that this takes place right after the Superman Legacy is when Lanterns is going to be released. But they talk about this series having or at least contributing to the bigger overall main storyline arc. So this is going to be a very important television series in regards to Lanterns, to really see how it's going to affect the rest of the movies and the bigger overall picture. So it seems as though the Lanterns are investigating what this bigger threat certainly might end up being. Marcelino also says The Authority, great. Finally, these characters will get live action debut and can't wait to see Midnight and Apollo. I'm not too familiar with Authority, but I love the move to bring Wildstorm characters into it. If anything, this does open my eyes and hope, at least, to other outside DC films or properties getting the opportunity, like Milestone Comics, right? Like if you're bringing in Wildstorm Comics, maybe you can bring in Milestone Comics also. Like the idea of a Static Shock, I think would be great. I literally was just talking on Facebook Messenger with my group from A Plus Opinions Facebook page, and my moderator there, Reggie, talked about wanting an Icon movie. I would love a freaking Icon movie if they wanted to roll one out along with like a Static Shock. So the introduction of the Authority, while I'm not familiar with them, the idea that they're bringing on Wildstorm comic characters into the DCU for live action gives me hope that something like a Milestone Comics might get that same love. Marcelino says, I hope we see more Ares in Paradise Lost. He should not have been one movie. He should have been an overarching villain. Maybe that's one of the focuses on there. Like the idea of how it becomes an island just of women. That's pretty interesting to me, especially before the time of Diana. So I'm kind of curious. Marcy also says the comic they're adapting from Batman, the Batman movie, was already adapted into a direct video game animated film, Son of Batman. I have checked out Son of Batman. Yeah, it was a great movie, actually. So that should be pretty fun to kind of see. And I think Deathstroke is in that movie also. So whether or not they utilize him in in the series itself or the movie itself should be pretty interesting. Edward Sanchez Production says, I'm so excited. Me too, Edward. Still some things I'm scratching my head about and kind of curious to see how it's going to be pulled off. But overall, interesting slate. One that I'm really excited for. I got my Superman. I got my Green Lanterns in here. You're covering the Wonder Woman basis. You're even covering the DC stuff, giving us that booster goal that we've all asked for, and some new projects in the Authority along with Swamp Thing. And I think for me, the biggest intrigue is the idea of giving us another super in Supergirl, having two supes be very active in this DCU. I think is pretty interesting and compelling. So, and the fact that they are complete opposites should really be interesting to also see like what their relationship is going to be like, how it's going to form. The idea of Clark clearly having to maybe be sort of that bigger brother kind of role model or representation for Supergirl. So, and again, is Sasha Calle going to be representing Supergirl in this movie or somebody else? So a lot of moving pieces, but I'm really impressed with the first slate that we've got so far. And I'm really interested to see what else is going to be down the pipeline. But again, guys, we'll definitely talk more about this later on this weekend. And if you have other thoughts, again, in the comment section box below, leave your thoughts. We'll definitely continue our discussion throughout the remainder of the week with you guys. So definitely let your thoughts and voices be heard in the comment section box below. But that will do it for me here today, guys. But until then, do me a big favor, guys. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A+. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.